20 years ago today, something historic happened. Do you want to know more about it? Hi, my name is Brent Hawks. Today, December the 10th, is International Human Rights Day. And on International Human Rights Day, December the 10th, the year 2000, I announced at Metropolitan Community Church of Toronto that we would be marrying same-sex couples. That would happen on January the 14th, 2001, and it would be the first in LGBT weddings, legal weddings, in modern history of the world. In making that announcement, we had followed in the tradition of couples trying to get married. There were 8 LGBT couples who wanted to get married, and they had gone to City Hall in Toronto to get a marriage license and were denied a license. So they sued the city, the province, and the federal government because all 3 levels of governments had a hand in marriages. And so we had a lawyer for the church, Douglas Elliott, brilliant lawyer, who was intervening in their cases on behalf of the church to support those 8 couples. And during their discussions, Professor Kathleen Leahy from Queen's University had done some research, and she mentioned to Douglas that in the Ontario Marriage Act, it said that there are 2 ways to get legally married. One is to go to City Hall and get a license, which most people did in those days. But the second way, a more ancient way, a more churchy way, was that you could go to a minister, a clergy, a rabbi, an imam, and you could ask them to do your wedding, and they would do it through the publication, if they agreed, they would do it through the publication of the banns, B-A-N-N-S, which means on 3 consecutive weeks in their worship service, they would announce that Jack and Mary wanted to get married. Does anyone know of any lawful reason why they may not? And this assumed that the local congregation would know the couple, and that if there was anything illegal about this, that someone would speak up. And in the act, it named reasons why someone could not be legally married. Either they were already married to someone else, or they were brother and sisters, or one was not legally competent to make the decision, for instance. Those are some of the reasons. And so Kathleen Leahy said, because it says any 2 persons in that act, it never said male and female, she said to Douglas, our lawyer, I think Brent can already marry gay and lesbian couples, because I had a license to marry couples, heterosexual couples. So Douglas came to me and said, would you do this? And I said, I have to check with the board of the church. I did. We had a long discussion because we knew that this was probably going to be pretty important. But everyone agreed we should do this. So on December the 10th, 2000, we were preparing to make that announcement on International Human Rights Day. And we invited a reporter from CBC to cover it, to break the story. So during the church service, I got up and said that we had chosen 2 couples, Kevin and Joe and Anne and Elaine, because they'd already had a holy union, a blessing of their relationship years before. They'd already had their private moment. They were very stable and wonderful couples. So I announced that Kevin and Joe and Anne and Elaine were going to get married, and did anyone know of any lawful reason why they may not? And of course, there were no objections. And so I said, well, it's my duty to rule, therefore, having heard no objections, that the first day of the reading of the banns was successful, and we would proceed to day 2. So we were all excited. We all hugged each other, and it was an amazing moment at church because we knew that this was a historic, exciting moment. But as the news broke through the CBC, we started hearing all kinds of pushback and objections. And so the second Sunday, on December the 17th, 2 people came to object in the middle of the service. And one of them was Ken Campbell, a leading activist against LGBT rights. And they were respectful in stating their objections, and they got up in the service and said, we object. And they used a misinterpretation of Scripture to support their arguments. After they objected, my role was to rule whether it was a legal objection or not. And I ruled, of course, that they were not legal objections and that we would proceed with the reading of the banns. And again, everyone cheered, and it was exciting. And by week 3, on the 24th of December that year, 2 more people objected for the same kind of reasons. I ruled in the same way, and because that was the 3rd time of reading the banns, said that on January the 14th, 2001, we would proceed with the weddings. And that unleashed a flurry of activity. There were dozens of media outlets every day. I think I did over 100 media outlets during the 6 weeks. And but it also meant that there were threats that came, death threats. And so the police insisted that I wear a bulletproof vest the day of the wedding. I had bodyguards picking me up at church that morning. I kind of half jokingly say, but it was kind of true, that of those 12 bodyguards, 11 of them were the toughest looking lesbians you've ever seen in your life, and one gay man coordinating it all. And so they picked me up and took me, my husband and I, to church to make sure that we were protected. The night before, I'd called my family in New Brunswick to tell them that I loved them, just in case anything happened. So it was exciting and terrifying that day. There were 50 police officers at the church. 1,000 people came for the weddings that afternoon. That morning at church, at the regular church services, we let our guard down and a woman assaulted me in the middle of the service. And the 1,000 people all had to be searched as they came in. The sanctuary is packed. We had overflow in the social hall. And I had to walk through a corridor full of police officers in order to perform a wedding. So the weddings proceeded without incident, and at the end of the service, I declared both of those couples to be legally married. There were 80 media outlets from around the world in the sanctuary that day. And in many countries, it was the first time that the media covered, in a positive way, LGBT issues. And it was about two loving couples and a pastor and a wedding. The governments of the day refused to recognize those weddings, so we took them to court and we sued them. We asked the judge to add our case to the 8 couples that tried to get a license from City Hall, and that happened. And so we proceeded together, and we won the court case, and we won the appeal case. And when we won the appeal case, the judges ordered the government to backdate the approvals to include those weddings that happened on January the 14th, 2001. And so it was 20 years ago today, at a church in Toronto where that announcement was made, that would ultimately change the lives of LGBT people all over the world. So, on this 20th anniversary of that announcement, we give thanks for the Metropolitan Community Church of Toronto, and we give thanks for the legal system and the media and the changes we're seeing all over the world. Thank you.